Hello, everybody. Laura Eisenhower here. I'm here with my good friend, Drago Reid. We are doing this show called The Rebel Collective. And what a story as far as how this idea came together, right, Drago? So,
It's been a long time in the making.
yeah, we've been friends for a long time, and just this idea and concept just emerged when I was visiting him in Tampa, Florida. And there's just so much to know about you as a person, let alone just the kind of topics we're going to dive into and the sort of guests we're going to bring on. But we want to dedicate this first show to just get to know you more. So I'm going to read a bit about who Drago Reid is. And yeah, we could talk about how this all transpired, but I think that'll just end up coming up as we flow with our conversation. Drago Reid is a Dolores Cannon level 2 QHHT, which is Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique, past life regressionist. Less than 5% of all hypnotists in the world possess this knowledge and skill set. Through this technique, he is able to take the average everyday person to the somnambulistic state of trance, the deepest level of an altered state that exists within the human mind, through simple visualizations and colors to obtain unlimited amounts of information for the client. This is the part of the mind that allows the experiencer to directly visit and time travel to view multiple past, future, and parallel lives, where they experience it firsthand with their own eyes, from very common Earth lives to mind-blowing extraterrestrial lives, otherworldly existences, in between life incarnations, and get answers to life's hardest questions like, why are we here? Are we alone in the universe? Why did I choose this life? And why did everything happen the way it did? This technique also gives the client the faculty to access higher and hidden knowledge, other dimensional realities, blocked memories, and unlocks the pathways to access and view all your lives going all the way back to source. This technique also allows the person to go back in time to the past of their current life, if necessary, to re-witness traumatic events that created trauma or PTSD, viewing it from a non-emotional point of view, where through the process of suggestion, immediately remove the emotional reaction from the event in order to see it and understand it from a higher understanding, guided directly and explained from the higher self or subconscious, whatever label you would like to put on it, in order to permanently heal, rehabilitate, and integrate these past traumatic moments to find closure. This technique is also used to heal physical pain, injuries, drug use, emotional issues, disease, cancer, recover memories, and deal with countless other afflictions permanently in a single session. Drago is a polymath, an adept researcher, and a deep dive investigator with over 2 decades of study in the fields of ufology, astrobiology, exobiology, exopolitics, consciousness, quantum physics, and quantum mechanics, philosophy, the electric universe and the cosmic web, pre-written history, the real suppressed history of the Earth, galactic history, extraterrestrial life and abductions, the military-industrial complex, and trauma-based mind control programs. He is also a Project MKUltra mind deprogrammer with such groups like Monarch, Moriah, The Family, The Network, Kruger, Nachtwaffen, and the Secret Space programs, dealing directly with program assets, sex trafficking, and assault victims, MyLabs, alters, multiple personality disorder, dissociative identity disorder, the reintegration of those alters or removing screened memories. He studies ancient civilizations involving the Anunnaki, Lemurian, Atlantean, Egyptian, Babylonian, Mesopotamian, Catholic, and Roman empires, and is a storehouse of esoteric, occult, and Gnostic knowledge. Drago is also a historical artifact collector and dealer. Due to a major motorcycle accident in 2005, from crashing violently into a wall at 120 miles per hour, Drago had a near-death experience and an out-of-body experience, breaking numerous bones and suffering substantial brain damage to the parietal and occipital lobe of his brain, including his reticular activation system, the visual processing center of the brain, inadvertently rewriting his neurons, giving him unexpected side effects. He developed numerous cognitive upgrades, including a dramatic boost in IQ, claircognizance, precognition, high probability prediction, and he can process numerous scenarios in 1/100th of a second. The capability to understand complicated concepts through fluid intelligence without any foreknowledge of the subject, and can process time in slow motion at unfathomable speeds. As the bump on his head caused his eyes to unpredictably access an abnormal amount of frames per second visually that 99% of humans cannot access without the use of slower motion photography. Humans can see 24 frames per second at its basic average, and his augmentation allows him to process speeds of over 200 frames per second, with the skill to read people and microexpressions with extreme accuracy in slow motion, making him an amazing hypnosis practitioner and investigator because he can see and detect what others cannot. His legal diagnosis is traumatic brain injury, post-amnesic disorder with retrograde amnesia and a form of savant syndrome. He has the ability to liquidly see concepts as Nikola Tesla did in his mind, and how things can be built or created in their most rudimentary and functional form using the least amount of parts. He can reverse engineer technology and tell you how to improve a product with less steps involved, or create a new idea for a product that's never been utilized and constantly thinks of new inventions. He comes from a military family with a famous invention patent. He is a world traveler visiting 18 countries the last decade, spreading and collecting knowledge and visiting the ancient sites to find truth about the answers to the universe. He is also a full-time tattoo artist and body piercer of 22 years, working in Tampa, Florida. His website is fractaloflight.com. And yeah, wow, what a bio, Drago. And
Quite a mouthful.
Yeah, and I was just with him in Tampa, Florida. And he was telling me about all this and just getting to know you over the years, and you just telling me about this accident and just what this journey has been of, what you go through every day. Yeah, like, talk to us about this. Like, I mean, how you manage this on an everyday level, how you manage like just this healing process and what it's opened you up to. I mean, and why we've come together to do this.
I would say my process really was kickstarted in 2005 when I had that motorcycle crash. It was just one morning I was doing some stupid stuff and I was going too fast, and I went to go take an exit going way too fast as well. So years later, I would find out that exit is rated 35 miles an hour, and they're, when the city comes in and makes these little fish snake kind of like things in the pavement when they're redoing pavement. When you hit it, your tire goes bub, 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 bub. So when I hit it, that caused me to violently start shaking. So at that point, I knew I was going down, and I knew that was that. Part of that experience, I remember waking up on the side of that road, and before that had happened, I'd kept this to myself for a long time because I was atheist for a long time. And I remember having this experience where I can see myself from above my body and look around while I'm unconscious on the ground, and I can bend down, and as I'm looking down, I'm in my clothes that I'm wearing while looking at my body. It was pretty freaking crazy. But that moment, I knew the entire left side of my body was broke. And I remember when the ambulance came after I had went back to my body, they told me they had to cut off my jacket, and I told them, you're not cutting my back jacket off, because I had just paid like $450 for this thing, and I'm only like 25 years old in 2005. Like, come on, people weren't rich back then. People are barely rich now. Like, that was a lot of money for a 25-year-old on a motorcycle. So I was proud of that freaking two-tone jacket. So I told them they can cut it off. No, they said they wanted to cut it off. I told them not to cut it off. They went to pull it off, and I remember passing out again. And back to looking down on my body. So they pull that jacket off. They didn't cut it. I still have that jacket. It's freaking amazing. And years later, I just started noticing that stuff around me was changing, and I started seeing things differently, like visually, spiritually, emotionally. I started being connected to things, and I started noticing things about everyone and everything. And like, I started having this knowing. And it wasn't till years later when I totaled my Honda S2000. I had a drift car, and the wreck was not my fault. I was driving like 35 miles an hour in traffic, and out of nowhere, a car comes at me reversing at a 45 while in a 2-lane traffic on a highway as I'm exiting that exit. And I remember when it hit me, I spun around and did like a 360. And at that point, my slow motion vision was activated. And I remember seeing in slow motion as I turn and counter stare, everything's in slow motion. I see all these particles of dust, and I see the airbag deploy. And I remember I can make all these decisions in between time. And sometimes people report that happening during violent things that happen to them where they can kind of see in slow motion. But the issue is it didn't really go away. And it gets to the point where I have all these augmentations and the ability to see all these frames per second. Like when I talk to people, I can see the things that they don't, emotionally they're giving out. Like I can see micro expressions. I can see the twitches in their foot. I can see when they ask them a question directly, how they don't answer it specifically. And like telepathically, it's almost, I feel that this little bump on my head kind of opened me up and unblock some stuff where I can connect to people that way. Because if you know me personally, people all my life have told me that I'm psychic, and they say I can read their mind, but I don't think I can read their mind like you think I can. I think I'm just open up more telepathically, and the human mind can just transfer these ideas, and I pick them up during these conversations. And it's been a long, painful struggle. I broke like 11 bones that day. I damaged my parietal lobe, my occipital lobe, and my reticular activation system. And the thing that controls how we see is the reticular activation system of the brain. Is located right here. And what it did is, at any given time, the human brain can process 128 bits of information, kind of like, that's basically like a Nintendo, maybe a that's a PlayStation. 128 bits of information out of a million bits of information all around us. So when we're walking through life, our brain's only processing 128 bit, like a little video game. And what my augmentation does, it takes that 128 bit processing power and it dramatically jacks it up. So I'm seeing stuff that the average human mind can't even fathom, because to process everything around you, the human brain would be overloaded. And visually, since I see everything, I can predict things that are going to happen, like predicting a car crash, because I see everything happening in the conditions. Or like, it's crazy, Laura. Like, you've known me a long time, and like, when I talk about a lot of people in our industry and the things I know about, I can observe these things and I'll talk about them behind the scenes. And then years later, it turns out like that was 100% true. So that's just a simple little part of it. But ultimately, lifelong pain. The last 28 years, I get like 3 hours of sleep if I'm lucky. But left side of my body was destroyed. I broke a couple of ribs. I destroyed my left clavicle into like 7 pieces, broke my scapula out of my back. I remember they were sewing up part of my leg and like the tendon, and that was all busted open. And like, that wreck was pretty violent.
Unbelievable. I've heard about people that have had, these kind of injuries, and then all of a sudden they start speaking languages they never spoke before, or playing piano, and accessing abilities that weren't previously there. I mean, it's just wild that instead of it debilitating you, it like actually switched something on. I mean, it's not a story you hear every day. I mean, what were your doctors thinking when They were analyzing.
Thank you for bringing that up. I
MRIs.
was about to mention that. Like you say, it sounds too good to be true. So my neurologist thought the same. So when this guy hit my S2000, this was like my favorite car in the world. I drifted. Like I'm a lifelong race car driver. I've had all kinds of custom cars and like $100,000 supercharged Chevelles, and like I've always been like that racer and like that lone wolf. And what it did, like this wreck, it gave me dyslexia. So you mentioned that it gives me a bunch of these cool kind of abilities, yes, but it made me originally extremely OCD. And before we talk about my neurologist story about the insurance, because I had to sue this guy over this, actually, let's just go into that before I forget. Sometimes just let everybody know, as part of my brain damage, I don't like to call it brain damage because if we know about the law of attraction, you manifest that as being real. I don't like to say that I have a disability, even though that technically I would be legally disabled. But when I went to go sue this guy, the insurance company sent me to a neurologist. When I went to the neurologist, I told the neurologist all my symptoms. She didn't believe me at all. She thought I was lying. And she's like, all these symptoms, they seem too good to be true. Like, it sounds like something you hear on like superhero movies. I'm like, I agree. Like, I know it sounds crazy. So she sent me to a neuropsychologist. And what they require at the point where a neurologist sends you to a neuropsychologist, they make you take the PAS assessment test. And that's the test that Gettinger designed for MK Ultra. Once you take this psychological profile, they know how to break you down mentally, what your motivations are, what you're bad at, how to set you off, but it also detects malingering. So she thought my symptoms were too good to be true. She thought I was lying. So after I did 3 days of testing, these were like 8-hour days. I mean, this was minimum 15 to 20 hours of tests. And not only just like written tests, this was like physical tests, like the Tower of Hanoi, where like a monkey will take so many rings and make it where the largest ring on the bottom and the smallest ring is on top.
This is part of the therapy.
Part of what happened. Exactly. So we found out during that test that what happened to me, he concluded that that hemisphere in my brain was damaged because I was never, ever able to complete the Tower of Hanoi. Children can complete the Tower of Hanoi, and so can monkeys. You've seen them online doing the Tower of Hanoi. Every time I made a move, he would make a click. At 128 clicks, and he started realizing that I couldn't figure it out. We figured out that the part of my brain that processes information, kind of like steps involved, not remembering what mistakes you made in order to get that effect. So we verified that was true. One thing that we verified, which was freaking awesome, and the cool thing about it is I have my neuropsych evaluation right here. This is 14 pages. And the neuropsychologist came to a conclusion that all my injuries are real. And one of the cool things that we found out was I process speed at the top 1% of the entire planet, meaning that my processing center of my brain can process more information than 99.3% of the entire planet. So that's intense. So I'm always taking in information because I'm not just interacting with 128 bits out of a million bits of information. Peripherally, I'm processing more information that a human mind would normally block out. So I'm extremely sensitive to sounds, to sights, to feelings and emotions because I'm getting this overload all the time with all of it.
So where one thing has been disabled, something else is being advanced. I mean,
pretty much.
But you mentioned MK Ultra. What does that have to do with this?
Okay, so the psychological test that is used in modern medicine to detect what hemispheres of the brain that are damaged was actually designed by a guy who helped start all this program for MK Ultra, and that's one of those secrets that most people don't know about a neuropsych evaluation. So That's
But
one thing I tell people whenever I actually bring this up. Whenever you get a simple car crash, they do an evaluation on you that is so thorough that once it's logged into the system, that information is given to the government. I know that's crazy, but I think he invented that. I think he invented it in 1960s or early 70s, that test. But what it's designed to do, it detects deception. So, when you go for like an office position or some kind of jobs and they have you take this online test, it'll say, if you witnessed an employee stealing $10, would you report that an employee? If this happened over and over again, morally, would you be cool with that? So it'll ask you questions over and over and over that rearrange the way it asks you. So it detects over time if you're lying. So when it's trying to figure out the brain damage that you're claiming you have for this insurance claim, this test detects all of it. But it also detects everything about your personality, including your IQ and how to break you down. So I found this out years later going into my MK Ultra research, because that's one of the things I actually look into the most. I research MK Ultra very heavily. And since and only since we're talking about my neuropsych evaluation, I thought that information was extremely important for people to know.
But how is the person that evaluated you connected to MK Ultra?
They're not. That has nothing to do with the connection. Only the test. That is all.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so his evaluation through this system that was designed by that,
I got you,
pretty much concluded that I do have damage in parietal lobe, occipital lobe, reticular activation system, because those hemispheres that I claimed were actually damaged. And this also has to do with, here's all my medical records here of all my brain scans and stuff like that. So as part of like the neuropsychologist stuff, we did all the brain scans and we showed that were what hemispheres of my brain were actually damaged. So
but what
parts
about
that were damaged,
the parts of the brain that were activated? Were they able to see?
Yeah, so it basically like jumbled my neurons. It connected neurons that were never connected before. So as a side effect, I have liquid memory. This is what the neuropsych evaluation actually shows. So this evaluation can show awesome stuff about a person, and it can also show bad stuff. So it's depending on how it's interpreted. That's all I was saying earlier.
Oh, okay.
And the biggest side effect to having this brain damage is I constantly lose my train of thought and I can't remember what I was talking about. So if I start trailing off and talking about something, building something to explain something, sometimes I forget what I'm talking about. So if you remind me and be like, oh, you were talking about this, I'll just start as if I didn't stop. So that's one of the side effects. So we mentioned OCD earlier. That took over me for a while. And I realized, I'm like, how can I let this external force control me? And I remember I'm sitting on my couch one day, and at the time, this is 10 years ago, actually maybe about 10 years ago, I'm drinking a Diet Dr. Pepper. And I remember being OCD after that crash. I always have to face the label towards me exactly even, like my eyesight. So if it's on the left side of my couch, it has to face me with the label. It's stupid. That's what OCD does. So I remember after that point, I just got fed up. I'm like, how can I defeat this? Like, I have such a strong mind. How can I let this external force control me? So I remember saying the words and yelling the words no in my head. And I remember seeing command side like no in your mind, like yelling it out. And I remember I took that can and spun it. And I allowed chaos to determine how it would land. And I refused to straighten it up. At that point, it changed my life. It rewired my neurons just to fix OCD. It was that simple. I made a choice that I would normally not make, and I refused to give it energy. And then it just magically stopped. And I was one of those guys where I had to check my freaking doorknob 3 times before I left my house, making sure it was locked. That's insanity. Freaking OCD.
It's wild. So there's brain damage, but in the MRIs, were they noticing what you were able to access? I mean, did they give you feedback and validation of these abilities that you started to?
I don't think modern Rockefeller medicine has trained doctors on metaphysical abilities or the metaphysical realms in general, because everything is based on the Newtonian physics model. Like,
So this was your own experience that wasn't validated by the medical.
other than him saying that I have on paper that my brain does have all these augmentations, and I can do this and I can perceive things, and if I can describe it to somebody, it's almost like being Doctor Strange, where you can have something happening instantaneously with no idea it's coming, and you can process all these scenarios in the blink of an eye, thousandth of a second. And through the use of Occam's razor, my brain figures out what's happening before anything. So one of the things it does, if like, when someone jumps out and it shocks you and you jump, to shock me, it's damn near impossible. Like, let's say I'm washing dishes, for example. Someone can just walk in, you have no idea they're coming, and then boom, you lock eyes, and then I've already processed it. I have no actual reaction. Same thing with like fighting. Like, I've been a lifelong martial artist. Any times I've had to fight in the past, I have no emotional connection to it. Like, I'm not being emotional. I'm only being in the moment. I'm ascertaining everything. I'm reading everything. But most of the time in my later years, I always end up walking away from the fights, because I guess the older you get, you realize that fighting is stupid and fighting hurts. And it doesn't matter if you win, because your fists lose. Like, your body hurts and it stays with you for a long time. And like, I don't like hurting people, even if they deserve to get hurt. Like, I don't like fighting people, like, morally. I don't like to harm people. I don't like to harm insects. Like, I became a vegetarian like 8 years ago. Like, I step over ants and insects and spiders in the house. I'll go grab it and put it on my hand and put it outside. I refuse to kill a creature simply because it looks ugly, man. Like a water bug. Like, that's another reflection of me. You have to understand that everything in life is you. There's only one consciousness in this, all of existence and all the realities and everywhere. There's only one being. And the old me would be the asshole guy, lifelong of being made fun of, and like being the fat kid, and like growing up without the father and having no one to talk to, and have the mom always be gone. So basically you raise yourself, that's a tough life to go through that your whole life and really truly have nothing. It's only thing I remember growing up, the only thing I had was books. So the only thing I did was read. And like, the bike crash, it made me closer to all consciousness, because I started seeing that connection to everything. And I would look into these insects' eyes and these reptilian eyes, and like, I would only see myself. Like, I remember swimming in the Great Barrier Reef off the coast of Australia in Cairns. It's like 50 miles off the coast, and like, random shark starts to come. And I remember that shark coming near me, and like, we looked each other in the eyes, and like, it was a beautiful feeling. And like, at that time, like, everyone has a illogical fear of sharks, but that moment, it's like, I only seen myself. Even when the shark was coming, I only seen it as myself, and I didn't feel that fear, because number one, I know I'm not coming to kill myself, because that's irrational. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So when I seen the shark, it was elegant. It was like watching like music. Like, when I observe animals and insects, I figured out that I was actually, through QHHT, you get to basically go under and figure out all these past lives you lived. That includes parallel lives, future lives, all of the lives you've ever lived. And I've been an elemental spirit, which basically, you can call it kind of like the wind. And at the time, before I seen this life of myself, I didn't know exactly what the wind was. Like we take stuff like that for granted, you know, just in life. Like we step on blades of grass, not realizing that grass is conscious. You know, we step through the grass, not realizing there's insects living lives, and like we take those lives away unknowingly, you know? But I see all that and it's hard not to see it. So with all this brain stuff, man, like with the elemental life, I realized that you go in as wind and you make change, because without the wind, without the experiences of wind, there's stagnation. Insects die, life dies. You don't make choices to move. The bad weather doesn't come. You don't uproot yourself. You stay fixed. And then one of the symptoms we found out with QHHT is the times that in life when you stay in the situation you know is toxic, where you can't move, you can't make that decision to leave, you start getting pain in your hips, in your knees, in your ankles, because those three things represent forward movement in life. And if we stay stuck in those situations, we get these chronic pain that Rockefeller medicine says they can't help you with. They'll give you surgery after surgery after surgery, but then you figure out once you go under, it's all metaphysical. You're doing something in your life, and the pain is a physical manifestation of what you're doing. And if you know the physical pain being the answer, that'll tell you what you're doing wrong. It's telling you, step out of that toxic relationship you're in, step out of that toxic job you're in, because those two things are the two top things in the world that people die of regret from, and where they don't experience the full life because they had the fear of leaving that relationship where they felt they just never had a choice to actually leave. I mean, everybody understands that. Like, we've been in those relationships, everybody has. But you realize a lot of these moments where you get all these physical pains, a lot of times they don't go away. They can go away for a while, but then they start coming back. And you realize that if you can remember that the pain reflects what's going on in your life, and it's only escalating physically as a reminder from the spirit that you're doing this wrong. And if you don't pay attention to this exact pain, then you're clueless. So that augmentation, it made me connected to everything. And like, I could see someone walking down the street and I can tell them what exactly is going on in their life in extreme detail, and they'll freak out asking me how I know these things. And it's a science like this, the metaphysical world we're talking about. That's the secret to everything. I believe the future is bringing metaphysics and the perception of what we can't see, kind of like the fractals and like stuff like that, stuff where we can barely observe with even technology. They say that doesn't exist, but if we can acknowledge that these realms work, like with QHHT, why can we heal physical pain from one session? Why can we explain why you had a traumatic car crash before you had a car crash, and then higher self show you why it happened? Like, it's next level stuff, man. So going through all this pain my whole life, I've met nothing but snake oil salesmen. You go to all these shows. Every time you go to one of these big shows, you see snake oil salesmen everywhere. You know they're selling a fake cure. They're promising you everything, and they lie to your face. So I've been lied to my face for 28 years, and this is the only technique that truly heals people. And you have to go through it. Like anybody that's ever had a QHHT session, you can ask anyone, no matter who they are, if they've ever had a Dolores Cannon QHHT session. If they say yes, they will pause for a second, take a breath in, and be like, oh my God, you know? QHHT is amazing. So I use it when I investigate stuff with people making claims in the SSP or in government programs. Cool. If you want to verify that, I can help you verify that. But the side effect is I can also verify if you're being a fraud, you know, because we're accessing direct Akashic records. I literally put you under and open your third eye, and you see this directly with your third eye for the first time in your life. It's like opening your eyes for the first time as a baby, and you've never incarnated once, and you've never seen anything physical ever in your life, and you've never truly heard physical sound with only two ears, instead of just being a light frequency, interpreting everything as frequency. Very overwhelming.
Yeah. I don't even know where to go from here. So with,
Funny thing is, go ahead.
yeah, I mean, your bio is just like so filled with like everything and this, kind of work you do. Um, your pain management too, which we talked about when I visited you, it's like you like face it head on in a way that others might not, like in the way that you kind of manage it. It's like been the biggest teacher and guide for you to open up into all this. And this, where do you want to go, like with this conversation, like, and why we came together to like do this show?
Okay, so funny thing about me and Laura, we've known each other, if I would guess, 10 years. And I've always been behind the scenes dropping next level information to her. And I've always paid attention to her life. And like, I was the guy that always cared when she was going through stuff in life. Because I seen all your suffering in myself. I went through the same stuff. And like, I know you pretty good. And like, we've been through a lot of similar things. So again, it's like I'm recognizing that other part of myself going through those same struggles. And like the pain has taught me for 28 years that I never had to do drugs. I never had to do pharmaceuticals. I never had to numb the pain. I never had to drink alcohol. I never had to do none of that. And I realized that the pain is a teacher. And going through all these lives that I've uncovered while going under with QHHT and even doing with sessions with other people where that person's higher self would have lived a life with you. And they're reappearing to activate a memory in yourself. And I'm giving these downloads through sessions of some of these other lives I've lived, and they're pretty freaking intense. But one of the things is I took a vow of pain to experience in this life because I've been through a lot of traumatic lives outside of all this. And it's not just human lives, it's lives in other bodies, in other existences. And it involves stuff involving the Orion Wars and stuff before the Orion Wars. And no matter what life it is, I mean, keep in mind, I have had regular lives as well. One of the last lives I had was in Missouri in the 1950s. Pretty horrible life. All have to do with racism and literally fighting racism. It was pretty bad. And it directly affected me and my family. But I realized through uncovering these paths of who I used to be that there's a lot of military connections, what you would consider would be military. And I'm not in the SSP program. I've never been in those programs. But I've been in other existences where I am on ships fighting people in other bodies. It could be reptilian bodies, it could be humanoid bodies. It does not matter. But for some reason, my spirit, since apparently I come from something what's called the Golden Phoenix Fire. And I can go into what that is, but we can go into that maybe later. But being part of the Golden Phoenix Fire is you one of the biggest parts of that's duality. So you have to experience both sides of the masculine and feminine of the duality. So I've got to experience a lot of the good things, and I've got to experience the worst of the worst. So a person of my level would choose the most horrible existences, the most physical pain, because I've used that to direct other people's lives in military structures on other planets. And it's taught me that I'm connected to every single life. And all these lives together of experiencing all this pain is I realized that working on both sides of the spectrum, that I realized that life is the most important thing that should be cherished, because humans are held back very badly, and we are way more powerful than we're told. And stuff like my abilities through like my bike crash, a lot of other people around the world has this. They make movies about the X-Men and all this other stuff. Unfortunately, my abilities had to come through trauma, which everything we know about powers coming out, it all comes through some kind of torture that activates this potential in humans. We all know about this. It was uncovered during MK Ultra. So you torture someone, in their DNA, these abilities will actually come out. And just experiencing the ability to step out of your body during these crashes, and like, that was one time you could say I kind of died. The first time was actually, I think, around 12 or 13. I actually drowned, and the most messed up thing about it was I was with my family and no one even noticed. Just remember, I was like that 12 or 13-year-old fat kid that no one cared about. Family never was really close to me. I was always like the loner, like I was always like the outcast. It wasn't by choice. It was always about a form of judgment, I guess. But I remember drowning in the Guadalupe River and stepping out of my body for the first time, and what that was like. And like, at that time, again, I'm an atheist. I didn't believe in God. I don't believe in anything other than when you die, your lights turn off. So that really woke me up. So that happening at 13, and then happening at 25, and then seeing ETs in the sky for the first time at 23 with someone directly next to me, like verifying at the exact same time. So it was just like one thing after another. And then all the bike crash happened, and then I started seeing, and then it changed my life, because right before that, I was pretty deep into research. Like, as a kid, I remember my obsession with reading came at the age of around 13, from what I can remember. Now, keep in mind, almost all my memories of childhood are gone. When my neuropsych evaluation says that I have traumatic brain injury, post-amnesic disorder with retrograde amnesia, that means that I have permanent amnesia. So from like birth to age 10, almost all those memories are gone. So those memories are pretty much wiped out. I only remember having about maybe 20 memories that I put together, but there's nothing before age 10 that I really remember.
Does the QH does the QHHT process help you to recover any of those memories though?
Yes, the issue I've had with the past is some of the people I've come across are more like students. And what I've needed is someone a little bit more advanced. So what I've done for a long time is I try to get to know the level 3 teachers, because it's going to take a level 3 teacher more than likely to help do what I need done, because the level of things that is wrong with my brain, it's a lot. And I don't think those level 2s would have enough training to deal with somebody like me, because the extent of what is wrong physically in my body, it takes a lot of effort. So like, if I deal with someone like me, I'll probably spend 7 or 8 hours with them in one day, because it takes that amount of time to do a body scan and heal individual things is over and over and over. And it takes so much time between that to actually make sure it's really, really done, because I need advanced healing. And most of the practitioners that I've came across, they've always been busy, because QHHT, it's a very limited job skill. I would say that there's only like 5% of hypnotists in the world that actually do QHHT, because none of them are legally qualified to go to trance, because most hypnotists only take you to alpha. That's like the first altered state, kind of like when you drive a car and you basically lose the last 10 miles of driving. You're like, how did I not crash my car? That's alpha. What we do is we take you past delta. Delta is like REM sleep. We take you straight to trance. Trance you experience right before you wake up and right before you go to bed. And that's like basically the astral dream realm, the dream realm. You know, when you have that most realistic dream in your life, and you always compare anything that happened to your life to this one dream, and that dream was more real than anything you've ever experienced in your life. That's what QHHT is. Once you see these things with your pineal gland open, when you open up to this life, when you're laying on a couch and you're starting to see this other life, it's like more than virtual reality. Like you are that person, like you know your name, you know where you live, you know how your house was built, or like who these people are. Like it's amazing things. But as part of that brain damage, I can see patterns in everything. I can see patterns in nature and people and water, the way traffic moves, the way animals fly in the sky. I see everything, and it's like mathematical. And it constantly processes stimulus. Like to have a mind that processes like me, it's difficult because you're processing everything around you. I can hear conversations from down the street. I can be in a restaurant hearing nothing but chatter and everybody talking, and I can look at a couple talking in the distance and I can hear their voice, and then I can look away and only hear their conversation because my reticular activation system can cut out all the chatter. It can like turn it down, and then I can focus. Like crazy stuff like that. It may be big into like game theory and like a tactician. So whatever this bump did, it gave me the ability to act like literally like a military tactician. Like I can think of any scenario and I can see every scenario interacting with itself all at the same time. And now I should do this or not do this because I can see all these like almost like timelines. Like kind of like Doctor Strange can see, like he's seeing these possible timelines and you see how they interplay and interconnect and they weave together in this similar fabric, but they're all different threads. And then you can logically choose this thread and like this is the reality. So like me predicting things, that's how it works. I can see everything happen, and logic tells me that this is the answer, and like 99.9 of the time I'm always right, which sucks
How do
because
you
like
manage it?
knowing what's going to happen all the time, it takes the spice out of living in life. It's just like, oh crap, I see that this scenario was set up, the only logical thing to happen is going to be this.
So you must
But
struggle with, should I share this or should I just keep it to myself when you know something's going to happen? I mean, how do you navigate that?
the old me would want to be the blabbermouth. But I guess as you get older, the more intelligent you become, you realize you talk less and you react less and you stop responding to things, because I realize that everything happening around me is a test. If something's being combative in my life, my higher self is showing me a scenario that I struggle with, and more than likely I'm going to react emotionally. And if you do, you lose. It's that simple. So I always tell myself, this is happening for a reason. The universe is waiting for my response. If I respond wrong, like the same person that you would normally be, you react the same way over and over incessantly each time. And that's how you stay in that time loop. But in order to make new neural connections in your brain, I've developed this thing where if I find a pattern in myself, I will automatically break it. Like I can walk, like we hung out at the tattoo shop for like 3 days. And like we'd go for walks and stuff, right? And now I just lost my train of thought. What was I just talking about?
When we were at the tattoo shop walking around, and
Now I just freaking lost my train of thought. See, this is what I'm talking about. So I'll talk about something and I'll load a subject, and then I'm like, what was I talking about?
we were talking about how do you manage knowing something's going to happen, and do you share it in order to forewarn somebody, or do you just keep it
Yes,
inside?
yes. I'm one of those guys where even if it's a situation where I don't like you, I'm still going to tell you something could possibly happen because I feel like almost an obligation. I was talking about, the point of what I was saying was the
Can you
old
stop
me.
them from a tragedy that you know is going to happen,
Yes,
and shift the
yes.
timeline, you know?
As a possibility, yes. Like most people don't want to listen no matter what. Like even though you could predict what's going to happen in their life, like I can meet a person and I can tell you what's going on in their life. And the problem is you can tell anybody how to escape what they're going through, and they truly won't listen to you. So they'll just keep making the same mistakes over and over and over, and they never leave that environment. But like it could be a random stranger, like knowing things about people. Like I'm one of those guys that'll tell you that random thing, and you're like, how would you know that? Like, then I would say that everything happens for a reason. It wasn't random. There is no random. Like every person you come across in your life is an external manifestation of either an agreement or something that's going on inside your mind. And you attract these situations by the more you focus on it. So fear you attract the fastest. Love, it takes longer. So if there's something in your life that you really want out of love, that's going to take longer to manifest. If there's something that's going on in your life that you really hate, that energy there is so powerful that it only magnetizes and grows, and then it explodes. So I've learned to control all that. Mm-hmm. So like, I see what's happening around the world, all the world's suffering. Like it's one of the things from suffering in all these lives, like all this physical pain and being on the receiving end of no matter what's going on. And just to know what it's like to be that human condition of knowing a lifelong struggle with pain, it just makes you connect to everyone. Like you want to naturally help everyone, even though you can't truly help yourself. You just feel that if you can help somebody else, that changes your life. It also changes their life. Kind of like doing a favor for a random person. It doesn't matter what you get in return. Pay it forward, man. Like picking up a couple of random guys walking down the road that just blew their radiator. Like most people wouldn't stop. I'm the kind of guy that would stop. And they're like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, man, pay it forward, man. Like, I hope if one day I blow my radiator and I'm walking with 2 jugs down the street, that someone stops for me, you know? But like, again, as you get older, you would ask me this original question, and this is what we got lost on. Like, the new me doesn't respond to the stimulus anymore that's going on in my life. Like, I don't give life that reaction that you would normally expect, and it doesn't exacerbate anything anymore. And it's almost like living in like this zen-like state where all the chaos around the planet's happening, and like we know some really heavy stuff is going on around the planet right now, and that's not what episodes 1 is for. It's about just getting on that brain damage subject. So funny things it gave me, I can speak in fluent accents. I can beatbox. I can create original music because I used to kind of DJ here, there, back and forth. And I remember I can create original songs in my mind by beatboxing physically. The bump on my head gave me the ability to be a public performer where I can be on stage and I don't get any of that feeling of, I have trouble with small words. I'm really good with the big ones, but like conveying simple subjects with words sometimes is hard. But like, imagine that you can see the connection to everything, and then you can perform on stage, and then you can become each person, and like you can reflect parts of yourself back, and you can feel all those emotions. So that's what it's like with what that gave me. So like, I don't get insecure, I don't get shy, none of that happens. It's like when I'm on that stage, I'm connecting to every single being in that room, kind of like Dolores Cannon says, where she would be giving shows and she would tell the people to turn on all the lights because she's getting blinded by all these lights in front of her. She can't see no one in her audience. And like, that's the person I am. I want to turn on the lights. I want to look into each person's eyes and connect to every single person I'm talking to or any conversation I'm in, because like, that's what life is. It's just like being in those little small moments.
You were saying there was something though of the time I was with you though, that with these abilities that you might have been picking up on.
What do you mean?
When you sort of lost your train of thought, you mentioned something about when we were together for the, time we had in Tampa, that something might have come through as far as picking up on something. And then that's
Okay, that walk,
I
that walk we had, that basically started our show. That was the premise. You're like, dude, we have to start a show.
oh,
Like
right.
energetically,
That's what it is.
like it was basically like putting 10 years of conversations into one conversation, and like you truly getting to know me really for the first time, because like we got to talk for freaking hours and hours, and that's when I got to the point where I realized that I just found out that you got deplatformed. And that happened to me in 2016. Like all of my online stuff, they killed it for me. They deleted my YouTube in 2016, 2017. I'm shadow banned on Facebook and Instagram. Like, so at that point we were both frustrated because everyone seems to come at people like us, and we're tired of being censored. We're tired of being deplatformed, and like we're both fed up. We should just start a freaking show that's not on YouTube, where they can't just take us down and stop us from talking and speaking out, and like the ability to just hit enter and we're deleted off the freaking internet. Like what the world's coming to, it's madness, man. So this was the time I'm like, you know what, man? I have a cool idea for a show. I feel like we're the freaking rebel collective from Star Wars, and we're the ones fighting the Empire. Me and you are two freaking rebels. Like, we're the ones that's behind the scenes getting people together, and we're the people putting stuff in motion. And like, you're not born that way. Like, that's energetic, man. Like, if you could walk into a room and inspire people, that's because energetically that's who you are. Even though you don't feel you have it, you have it. But like, just two freaking survivors that's been through freaking lifelong hell. I mean, I know what you've been through. I've been through some freaking hell. And I think that's why our message, why this show is so important, because we're the ones that suffered so much. We've been through all the physical pain. We've been deleted so many times, and we've come back so many times that we're like a roach. You can't kill us unless you physically kill us, because we're not going to go away. And we need to have a platform to inspire people where they won't be afraid anymore. And that's what being part of that rebel collective is. We are the rebels, and we're trying to find that collective of people to help change the world behind the scenes.
Brilliant. Yep. Yes. That's absolutely what it's all about. That's what I was feeling. And it was just, and talk about synchronicities, right? I mean, it was just fell into place. And it's just amazing, just all your studies and just everything that I read in your bio, like digging into like all these different things. It's just uncovering everything. And what's wild is that an injury would open you up to things that are now being censored, or, oh, wow. I mean, what do you say to them in response? It's like, well, I mean, I got this injury and this is what I'm open up to. Like, why are you telling me to shut up? I mean, I'm just sharing what I'm feeling and sensing. It's like unbelievable that, it's being like taken down and not heard. And in the face of this kind of adversity, it's like you get stronger. And that's what you do. It's like you access a whole nother dimension. You had a name for you told me about portal to another dimension. You had this whole other,
Yeah, that's what I want to call my standalone show. Portal to another dimension.
when something takes down a part of ourselves, another doorway opens, which it did for you. So I think so many people that are going to be listening to this that might be experiencing this. I have a friend, for example, who had a stroke, and she is not accessing anything really. She's very debilitated. I wonder if there's going to be a breakthrough for somebody like her to be able to access something like you did, having a traumatic brain injury. Is this a rare thing for people with a traumatic brain injury? I mean, you had to navigate this on your own once you started to develop these abilities. After you got all the evaluations, were you just like, okay, you can't make sense out of it, so I'm just going to go on my merry way and just explore what this means to you? You know what I mean?
Yeah, so having a traumatic brain injury, it leaves you with a lot of questions that go unanswered. So you find yourself in the forums, you're like, what I'm experiencing is like something you would describe like the Flash experiences, like when he runs, he can see in slow motion. So I would look up medical cases and clinical studies of like those things happening. And then you find out, yes, they do happen. And then you figured out that a lot of these movies they've made are about real people with real abilities, and they're not just made up. And when I tell people that I have abilities, I always get that kind of laugh, kind of remark. And I kind of like giggle right back. And it's just like, you have no clue. Like, I think in the days of, since it's over sensationalized with superhero movies, that people that actually have abilities, people kind of downplay it and kind of joke it off. But if you know me personally, you know I have this influence over people. If you see me socially, you see the way people interact with me energetically, because I'm truly connecting with their energy. Like, I really get to know people and really see them.
Yeah. Do you think it was your willpower, though, that helped you to access these other parts of your brain? Because other people with traumatic brain injury, some are just not able to go where you've gone. Do you feel
Okay,
a part of your consciousness and willpower played a role instead of it maybe opening something up just because of the accident? Do you kind of get what I'm saying? Because
it wasn't just the accident. Like, when it really kind of dumbed me down as a person. Like, to have something happen to your brain and you can't control what's happening to your body and or your reactions and what's coming out of your mouth, like, that's pretty crazy. And I see that happening to people all the time, and people with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, and there's physical manifestations of what's going on with that are psychosomatic or like electrical, and like they can't control what's happening. So I started developing these techniques for my memory, because I would have object identification problems as one of the side effects of this. Like, I couldn't find my own deodorant in my own bathroom. My brain would look at it, my eyes would look at the object, and it physically can see it as if it's invisible. It would have to take another person to come into that bathroom and said, dude, it's right there. I'm like shocked, as if it just manifested out of nothing. It's just like, how is it possible for my eyeballs to be looking right here and not see nothing? So I developed this technique that I told the neuropsychologist, and he was really impressed with that, because he told me that people with traumatic brain injuries, they never really do the kind of rehabilitation of the mind like I've done. And when I told him that I created these techniques, he was really shocked. Like, I told him I created this technique called 1 gun, 2 shoe, 3 tree, 4 door, 5 hive, 6 stick, 7 heaven, 8 gate, 9 dine, 10 hen. And with those 20 words, I can remember almost anything. So number 1 is gun, right? So let's say, Laura, you write down 10 or 20 random objects. It can be 1 or 2 letter words, right? Just random objects. And I can look at that paper. It'll take me a couple of minutes, but by the time I'm done, you can tell me a number and I can tell you what's listed on that paper. I can even do it super fast. And the way this technique works is, since number 1 is gun, it's all like nursery rhyme: 1 gun, 2 shoe, 3 tree, 4 door. Number 1 is gun. So what would you write down for the first object on your paper? Random object. Anything. First thing that comes to mind. Let's say pink elephant. Let's say you wrote down the word pink elephant. What I would do is I would see in my mind, I would create a story really fast that shows a pink elephant associated with the word gun. So at that point, I see in a circus in my mind a painted pink elephant coming out with the circus into the central part of the part where the elephants come out, but it's painted pink. And I see a clown walking around with a plastic water squirt gun. So you would write down pink elephant. I would remember the clown walking around with that little squirt gun. So remember the number 1 is gun. So I would know that the answer to that is pink elephant. If that makes sense, you can do that you could find your rhymes up to 50 numbers. So 1 gun, 2 shoe, 3 tree. You can have that go so far up that you can damn near start having almost not quite a photographic memory, but it gives your brain the ability to retain stuff longer and creatively create new neurons of damaged pathways by creating these visualizations that help hold and restart these neurons.
So, so somebody who isn't able to access these parts of their brain that might be
Yes.
debilitated because of an injury or, a neurological disease or autoimmune or whatever it is, would you be able to kickstart them into being able to access this? Because I think this is where doctors are baffled by somebody like you, in that you just develop these techniques that they can't give to people to help them to heal, that you actually, took the reins and was like, okay, well, I'm going in a completely different direction than the medical industry could even provide. I mean, is this something you are able to activate in people that might just be in one of those states where they're so injured or they've gone through something where they're in the disability without having the ability to travel into the other parts of the brain that can activate those neurons, like you said? I mean, do you kind of get
I would say there's 2 circumstances. One would be either put them under with QHHT and have their higher self tell us why it's happening, and then ask them if we can repair those neurons that are damaged. Either there's an agreement to happen.
They might be making a choice to just not explore like you did, or like not that you can like create a conversation to create the inspiration for them to begin to access something else, right? I mean, it's just
So what I would do if I met someone who had a specific injury, I would want to get to know them, because I can use what I learned with my very specific injury, and I can help give other people ideas. I'm really good at that. Like let's say there's someone who has an advanced memory disease where they constantly nod out of the reality. If you can teach that person to have a memory technique where they can think of something every 30 seconds, that will slowly anchor them into not losing that consciousness going back and forth. So if you can remember to think of a simple object every 30 seconds, like if you're around your family and you nod off every 5 or 10 minutes and you can't remember who you are. If your daughter is actually visiting you, if you keep saying the mantra, daughter, 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 that keeps your mind focusing on one subject. And the more you repeat it, the more those neurons are going to try to fire. And you got to realize neurons aren't just these things that connect. These are like living organisms. Have you seen neurons under a microscope? They literally move through, like, I remember when they were showing parts of the brain and these neural connections were actually moving, they looked as if they were conscious, walking through this like material, and they can sense each other. I'm talking about these severed neural networks, and you see them actually communicate with each other, and they start walking to each other, and then they start touching like antenna, kind of like you see into insects, and they start becoming, and then that neuron starts connecting. So if you create a technique that constantly trains your neurons to start searching when they're not connected to nothing, that can create new neural pathways, but it depends on who you are. Remember, I'm coming from having legal amnesia. Like, I have no memories from childhood, hardly any left, So that will take someone that does QHHT that's really good, that's willing to spend that real time to really uncover what's going on.
But yet you can access your past lives. It's just not the memories of this, like your childhood. So you're
I
actually,
haven't had a session. I haven't had a QHHT session in at least 3 years. So the
you,
last 3 years, I've could have a lot of things answered, but I haven't. Whenever the COVID thing happened, whenever I was deplatformed, I walked away from public. I stopped doing the shows, stopped going to the convention, stopped following people online. Like, it really held me back because part of my QHHT, I was shown my future. And at the time, I wasn't ready to see it because I was really, really known. And I'm an extremely private person. And I always keep my private life to myself, just everything about me, no matter what it is. It's not like I'm hiding anything. It's just more like everything about me is for me and me only. Does that make sense?
yeah, and here
So
you're
I stayed
sharing
away
so
from it.
much. It's amazing.
Yeah, so it's kind of like when someone gets known online, everybody comes out. You get the stalkers, you get the fans, you get everybody.
All of the
So
chatters and the fans and the
at
followers.
that point, I didn't want any more drama. Like when I made that choice to leave Texas 8 years ago, when I had to sell my tattoo shop and my art gallery because I wasn't happy and the money just didn't make me happy. I wanted a simpler life. And when I did that, it allowed me to focus on myself. So the first 7 months I spent in Florida, I spent reading books. I wanted to quit tattooing at that point. So when I moved to Florida, I wanted to take at least a couple of years off tattooing, and I had enough money financially to help cover me for years. And I remember I lasted 7 months. And I remember that I missed the interactions with people. I missed having actual conversations because when you read books 7 days a week for 7 solid months, you discover a lot about yourself. And I remember discovering more information than I ever did my entire life in those 7 months. Now, keep in mind, at age 13, I remember being in sixth grade, and there was this book program where they say if you can read 250 hours of books, where basically your mom says, little Drago read 4 hours, 4.5 hours of this book per night. So they would have to write that down. So at 250 hours, you get a ticket to Six Flags. And I was extremely poor as a kid. So to be 13 and be able to go to Six Flags, like that was freaking awesome. So by the end of that year, I read 250 hours of books. And that kind of kickstarted it. And I think by high school, I had read, maybe by 10th grade, I had read just hundreds of books. And into adulthood, I've read well over 4,000. And that doesn't include PDFs. I don't know why I've never included PDFs, even though it's reading, but like all the books you see behind you, I've read a lot of these books, and they're not easy readers. Like it's some
But
heavy
after your
duty subjects.
but after your brain injury, you're still able to read and retain everything that you read.
Okay, so I have what's known as liquid memory. That's a step below photographic memory. So my memory allows me to take on complex subjects and read about them and understand kind of how they work in a rudimentary form, and to have a certain kind of knowledge that you wouldn't have with no training whatsoever. So I can read a book on advanced physics, not understanding the math part because part of my hemisphere of my brain that has to do with math, it just does not compute. So math, I suck. But the ideas of physics and how to put all these ideas together is coming from other past lives, because I've had lives dealing with technologies and crystals and electromagnetic everything, just everything. And one of the lives I had, I would kind of consider a controversial life, and I won't go into detail about it, but the type of technology that I can create can be used for good or bad. And like I said, I come from kind of like an invention family. And I was told through QHHT that everyone on my dad's side had this ability to create, and they're master manifestors, and we all get the number 22. We're master builders because we have the ability to see complicated concepts in our mind. So like I've invented 1,000 things. I write them down all the time. I haven't physically patented any of them. It's their only ideas, but I have full functioning ideas that come into my mind and I see how it all works together. Like Tesla said he had that skill. He can see how everything interacted with each other and how all these parts interweave. So like I can watch someone build something like a shelf or no matter what they're building, and I can tell them so many steps from now, this part is not going to fit because I see how everything interacts, kind of like a schematic or blueprint, and it just fits together and I see all the problems. So to have that ability and not be able to actually create stuff, it really sucks. Like I would love to figure out how to get real patents going and to work for a patent department because I would be creating stuff like crazy. The stuff I've invented is like next level, man. And it's not even been talked about. My stuff is so original. Every time I tell people, they're shocked. They're like, oh my God, you know?
I know we have to wrap it up, and this is just the beginning, everybody. And I just want to just do a whole bunch of shows just to continue to talk to you just about you and everything that you've been sharing. It's just like there's so much more to dive into, man.
I feel that was only like a sliver of a tip of an iceberg
So
located
this is
on a
just the
single
beginning,
planet
guys.
in a single part of the cosmos and all the realities. And like that was only just like the freaking piece of sand that I just spoke.
Right. So yeah, look forward to what we're gonna do together. Drago. Yeah, I have to jump on another thing, and I just wow. Incredible. I really look forward to where this is gonna go. Rebel Collective.
We're coming for you, people.
Yeah. Yeah. And all you folks out there that just have that willpower and strength and sovereignty to just be true to all that you are, you know, that have been banned and projected upon and ridiculed or misunderstood, you know, you have a place here to dive into all the abundance and magic and like abilities that we can explore together with this knowledge that is now being tapped into because of like something that would be a tragedy or an accident is like a blessing, and you live this, you embody it, and it's incredible. So I'm really looking forward to where we're going to go with this, Drago.
Me too. It's a long time coming, man.
Yeah, totally. All right, everybody. We'll see you next time. I think we're going to do another show. I want to do another show just to dive deeper with you, Drago. And then we're going to have guests.
We'll do a part 2.
Yeah, we'll do a part 2. And we're going to bring on guests, and we're going to have some amazing conversations.
We always do.
Yeah, I know. This has been awesome. All right. Thanks so much.
Bye, everybody.
All right.